know that this is getting ridiculous. I promised a Vladimir video twice already. But after you see what we are going to dive into, you will understand why Riven takes priority. Yesterday, Riot released the newest expansion for Legends of Runeterra, and this includes new cards for Victor, Zoe, and Riven. And the reason why Riven is so special is because her cards show us the Sisterhood of War series from a different perspective. Now, if you are not sure what this is, the Sisterhood of War is a long 3-part story that explains what is currently happening to Riven. It is a really good story that sets up why she is in a Noxian arena now. And of course, because these arts are going to show what happened here, and we will even explain it, beware spoilers for that series. So now, without further ado, let's have a look at what is so cool about these cards. Starting with Riven herself. If you know the story, you may already notice quite a few Easter eggs. We know all of the characters shown here, so just to remind you, the bold soldier behind Riven is Tenef. She is the most honorable soldier out of this entire Noxian squad. And of course, she's carrying her hooked chains, which is a weapon we have seen her use in action when the Noxian squad was fighting against the shapeshifting Ionian beast. To her right, we have Merit, the formerly noble soldier, whose wealth was probably taken away after Swain sees Noxus, and who's wearing a mask because her face was burned by the Noxian campfire, which was supplied by Singed. Here I should remind you that these three, together with Errol, who will arrive later, were in one squad and they all fought together. But one day, when they were escorting a chemical nuke to the heart of Ionia, it was detonated by a friendly commander, and all hell broke loose. Which means that, of course, on Riven's left we have Typhalangy, the runesmith, who was sent to Ionia, probably by LeBlanc, to recover Riven's blade and bring it back to Noxus. Two interesting things to note here. First of all, even though this is representing what happened in the Sisterhood of War series at the very end, this isn't exactly how the scene happened. There, instead of carrying hay and minding her own business, once Riven noticed them, she was actually standing in front of her lonely farmhouse, and she was just waiting for them. The other thing to note is Merit's weapon here. As you'll see in a later card, Merit is carrying her rider's spear, but here, for some reason, the weapon is broken and held together by runic magic. Now, although this didn't happen in the story, I do believe that this is a reference to what they were talking about there. Typhalangy, which is the runesmith, promised Merit a rune weapon once she killed Riven. I do believe that's what this is referencing. If not, this art is just showing us what Typhalangy can do. And once Riven levels up, it shows us exactly what happened in the story. At least, almost exactly. Because the person at the back here is Typhalangy, but for some reason she is not carrying her runed blade. I assume she has an axe here to look more generic, to really make Riven stand out in this art. But besides that, this is what happened in the story. If you don't remember, in Ionia, Riven was living a decently peaceful life on a lonely farm. Yes, Yasuo found her and they talked out what happened to his master, but besides that, she lived there relatively peacefully. And to make sure no one found her blade, which she was trying to hide from Noxus, she buried different pieces of her blade in different locations around her farm. And it was once she realized that she had to fight, that she raised the hilt of her blade, which ripped the shards from the ground and summoned them together. What's even cooler is that this exact scene was shown in her trailer. There you can see the shards flying from the ground and towards the blade. And then we have different cards for different pieces of her blade. The quote for the hilt of the weapon isn't really that important, but then Riven goes through a warrior saying as the blade forms up. A warrior must know the sharpness of their blade, an edge that cuts both friends and foes. A warrior must know the weight of their weapon, burdened heavy with guilt. A warrior must know their weapon's history, every bloody piece. But a warrior is more than their weapon alone. They must know power, but also consequence, forgiveness, and redemption. Of course, this makes sense from Riven's perspective, because even though her blade was forged in the depths of Noxus, by a power that is hard to comprehend by many, although it was made specifically for her, she doesn't want it to be an extension of herself. She wants it to be just a tool, because she wants to cut her connections to such a vile force. And then we have another card that shows us the Noxian squad. This one is for the Blade Squire, whom we know from the story as Aerith. And in front of him we have Errol, the Hound Mistress, of course with her Drakehound, Tenef with her hooked chain, and Merit with her spear. Of course, behind them we have the trusty basilisk called Tals. But interestingly, behind Tals, I wonder if this is a raven connected to Swain. I wonder if this is hinting towards the fact that perhaps Swain knows what this squad was doing in Ionia. And I wonder if this is a hint towards Swain possibly taking Riven under his wings. Anyway, the quote says, like the huntresses said, 100 days and nights, 100 blisters on these feet, 100 bugs in my breakfast, 100 blade this and vengeance that, and well more than 100 browbeatings from these three, I'll tell you. Of course, Arath is referring to the fact that he is just a blade squire, which means that the huntresses used him for everything, and we saw that from the story. He carried their stuff, he made camp, he went fishing for dinner, and he gathered wood for fire. He simply did everything. And of course, he even took care of their animals. Then there is a quick card for Hunt the Week, which shows Eros' 3 hounds. Now you may be remembering that she had 4 hounds, because she lazily called them 1st, 2nd, 3rd and 4th. But then you may remember what happened to one of them. So that's why we only have 3 Drake hounds here. And then we have Typhalange herself. And instead of an axe, she actually has her blade, which matches the one shown in previous art. Most weapons are crude tools, no better than the hands that wield them. But a weapon infused with runic magic is so much more than mere steel. Of course, that rune magic comes from the heart of Noxus, which means that it is the darkest of magics. Then there is Scorched Earth, which shows us Errol the Hound Mistress, although here she is referred by her formal title, the Tracker. The quote is referring to the fact that the hounds got Riven's scent. But unfortunately, despite this card being called Scorched Earth, first of all, I don't think this happened in Ionia. I went through the stories again and I didn't see this anywhere. But secondly, it's a shame they didn't use green fire for this image. That would be another cool reference to the Scorched Earth in Ionia, which is the massive burnt plain in the middle of Ionia which was caused by singed chemicals. Then we have a closer look at Arath. And surprisingly, he is doing the only job that wasn't described in the story. He did a lot, but I'm not sure he ever repaired their weapons. But that is not me saying he couldn't do that. Yeah, I'll mend your weapons, I'll tend the mounts and cook your bloody food. What else am I good for, eh? And here we have it confirmed that he is Arath. Next we have a closer look at the 3 huntresses. In the front we have Brutal Hunter, which of course is Tenef. To her left we have a closer look at Merit, with her mask covering her morphed face. And on the right we have Errol. Now here I had to stop for a second, because something looked odd about Errol. I thought she was supposed to wear a full helm, so I wasn't sure why this was like an opened crown. Well, I went back to the older art and I noticed that, yeah, that is not a helmet with the red paint on top. That is actually her hair, so it matches this art. And of course, this scene matches the story as well. When the 3 huntresses approached Riven, Tenef was the one in the front, she was the one doing all the talking. But then Merit lost her patience and the rest of the story happened. Then there is a quick card for survival skills, which is showing us why she has the black line across her face, even though this specifically never happened in the story. She was just peacefully farming when they found her. She wasn't actually preparing for a fight, so this unfortunately didn't happen. But then there is Wrathful Rider, which was the first time Merit's actual appearance was revealed. Before, this was the only time we saw her, but now we have a closer look. We already talked about her mask and her weapon, but not about her mount, which you may remember as Lady Henrietta. And I have to be honest, she was always described as something between a lizard and a bird, so I imagined her as one of those bird thingies from Final Fantasy, or even Scarl. But this is way scarier. Props to Arath because he actually had to take care of her. And in fact, if you remember the end of the story, Arath rode away on Lady Henrietta. Speaking of which, here I want to point out how perfectly this image frames the scene. Or nearly perfectly. The Sisterhood of War story ended with a duel between Riven and Merit. Typhalange kinda jumped in and tried to kill absolutely everyone because she was done with all the games, only to get stabbed by Arath from behind. But the real ending of the story was that Merit and Riven fought at the edge of a field and a tree line. And that's exactly what we have here. We have a field and we have the trees. Although, for this to be an honorable battle, Merit did not fight on Lady Henrietta. That's the only difference between the actual story and this scene. And if you don't remember, the duel ended when Riven pinned Merit to one of the trees with her blade. And for the last card, we have Errol with her 4 hounds. You know, still 4 hounds. The only thing I can really mention here is that the Drakehounds are one of the rarest animals you can find in Noxus. They are incredibly expensive, and they were only really used by nobles. So for Errol to have 4 of them, you can only imagine how powerful of a piece she has to be in the military. Now, to close this video off, there is also the Noxcria arena, but since the Awakened cinematic is canon, that is not where Riven was taken. To remind you how the story ended, the Noxian squad found Riven, Typhalangi got enraged because she learned that Riven broke her blade, and even more so because Typhalangi couldn't even imagine that such a weapon could be broken. And so she lost her patience and tried to kill everyone. Of course, she died at the hands of our hero Aerith, Merit followed her, Errol decided she had enough for family reunions, so she just wandered away on her own. Aerith jumped up on Lady Henrietta's back and rode into the distance, to deal with some Ionian family business of his own. And Tenef was the one who stayed behind to take Riven back to Noxus. Of course, Riven agreed to return to Noxus as a prisoner willingly. She could have struggled, but that would only cause more bloodshed, and that was the last thing she wanted. So now, canonically, Riven is being taken back to Noxus as a deserter. But from the Awakened cinematic, we know that she's going to be used as a Reckoner in the Reckoning arenas. And that is it for the cards. I really wanted to go through these because this really gives us a really cool perspective on the Sisterhood of War series. That was definitely the best storyline of 2020. And I'm so happy that this gets supported in Legends of Runeterra as well. So, I am going to say, the next video is going to be about Vladimir. But I am aware that something horrible is going to happen and I am probably going to make a video about Gragas.